Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Thank you so much for joining us. I'm here with Bobby Priestley. Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jessica.
Are you in the great state of Texas?
I am. I'm in the Dallas metro.
Okay, gorgeous weather.
You know what? It was actually really cold this morning. In fact, I had to cover all of my garden this morning because we actually had a frost. So it was crazy. On April 15th, we have frost, but tomorrow it'll probably be back in the 70s or 80s, so that's Dallas weather. So
Yeah, Dallas, the airport and I are not friends. That's the one airport that if I'm flying through Dallas, there will be an ice storm. It's just a given.
yeah.
So I try to avoid it at all costs, but I'm sure a lot of people in the rest of the country, like Colorado, they would like to be there right now.
Yeah.
We
had over the weekend. It was gorgeous. So it'll be back there probably tomorrow. So.
Well, today it's sunny here. I wish it was raining because if I can't be outside and go to the beach, it's just torture. So make it rainy so that I just am ready to stay inside. So we're going to dive in. I'm so excited to talk to you. So for those of you who haven't met me yet and you haven't watched some of the interviews, I'm Jessica Noble. Again, I'm here with Bobby Priestley. We're former colleagues, and so we also have a ton of mutual connections. And so it's been fun to catch up. So I'm just going to dive straight in and start grilling you.
Bring it on.
First, the firing squad. The first question I have for you is just kind of tell me a little bit about the company you're working for now, your role in that company, and how you got there.
Sure. So I'm working with a company called Cooper Perry, and specifically, it's the name of the company is Cooper Perry IT, and it's kind of an interesting way I got here. I was with TriBridge for many years, and then was at DXC for a while after the acquisition. And back in September, I left DXC, and I really needed to take. I've been going at it for it's been 15 or 16 years, and I really needed to take some time off. And quite frankly, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I've been in this kind of Microsoft channel world for a long, long time, for probably 20 some years. But anyway, I just did a lot of soul searching, and I really figured that after that, I was like, you know what? I don't really care so much about how much money I make. It was really about, I wanted to be in a role where I can make a difference in a company. I work with just amazing people. And it was really about how can I serve people? And again, I spent a lot of time after I figured out that I wanted to get back in the workforce. I spent time looking outside of the Microsoft community. And then lo and behold, I got pinged on LinkedIn by somebody that was at Microsoft and said, hey, you need to check out this company. They're looking for somebody. They're a UK company, and they're looking for somebody to start up their US operations. So I thought, well, that sounds kind of cool. So anyway, I went to their website, and oh my gosh, I said probably within 2 minutes, I knew that this was something different, and it was something really cool. And then, long story short, and we get there, and eventually, literally, I think 2 weeks later, after meeting with the two owners of the company, they were so into people. The culture is so cool. I knew it was where I needed to be. So, a long-winded way of kind of how I got there, but it's a really cool organization.
Well, and the fact that came through even just on the website is incredible about how someone can convey culture and all of that through a website. I don't have that skill. So for those of you who heard Cooper Perry IT and it rung a bell and you're scratching your head thinking, where have I heard it before? If you were on the summit last week, we talked to Paul Hansen, and he's from Cooper Perry. So for those of you who were wondering, they are colleagues, and actually Bobby introduced me to Paul.
Yeah.
So just a quick connection there for those folks. Paul's from the other side of the pond, which we chatted about when we talked to him.
Yeah, he's got a really funny accent, way different than mine. So
yeah, we agreed on that I had a funny accent when I was talking to him. So you got your company, you work remotely. I mean, unless you're every day flying over to the UK.
yeah. Yep.
What is that like for you?
You know, working totally remotely was a little bit different, although, when, at TriBridge, I was in Dallas and our headquarters were in Tampa, but we did have a team in Dallas. So I literally went to the office and would interact with my team, on a certainly weekly basis. But working 100% remote has been a little bit of an adjustment because I like that personal touch, right? But the cool thing is that that's our business model. Our business model is that we deliver IT services 100% remotely. So we have to, as a leader of this group, I've got to be really comfortable with being able to be really productive working remotely. And if I'm going to lead a team that does that and talk to customers about how we can come in and deliver 100% remotely and be actually even more successful than we could be coming on site, I've got to embrace it. So it's been, I have to say, it was a little bit of an adjustment, but now, after 5 months, I'm all in. So
yeah. Well, I would think it kind of helps the empathy factor with clients, because I know I am sometimes not very empathetic to people working remotely, because I've worked remotely for 20 years and I love it. But so I forget what a big difference it is. And so now that you're kind of in your customer's shoes working remotely full time, I would imagine it's easier to envision if they have hesitations or concerns.
Yeah, I think it's really about understanding what tools you have available, and then how to leverage those tools. Mm-hmm. And I think about our business, and I've been doing IT services for a long time, and for the most part, have been pretty successful. Our teams have been successful delivering successful projects, but you know what? Every once in a while, you have a project that just goes south, right? And even in the successful projects, you have times where things are just not good. And when I really dissect all of that, it's like communication or poor communication is usually at the root of all the problems in a project.
Yeah.
And I think about, the way we deliver remotely, it really, really forces great communication. And so I think that, I find myself becoming more and more disciplined, more organized, and having very regular communication. I do everything with video now. Even when we have Teams calls and people are on the call with just their voice, I'm on with my camera, so, because it makes me feel like that I'm literally right next to somebody. So, right. And that's the way we encourage, our team. We do everything with Teams now. And very rarely do we have anybody on our Teams calls that are not on video. So and when we work with our customers, we do the same way. So wow. It works out really, really well.
I've had some leaders who always wanted to be on video, and I enjoy the video, but I need advance notice. Need a little bit of prep time.
Yeah, I don't have to do my hair, right? So I just literally can get out of bed and pop into a Teams call and look gorgeous, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think mine partly is psychological, but we don't want to get into the psychology of me. So I imagine some of your customers and prospects aren't totally comfortable working remotely or with working what those tools are. How do you folks help them kind of get over that hump?
How do we help them?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm just guessing that you have customers or prospects who aren't comfortable working remotely.
Oh, I thought, yeah, okay, I misunderstood what you were asking. Yeah, we actually, even like in the sales process, when we're talking to a prospect, in fact, we had one just recently where they loved our approach, how quickly we can do, how quickly we can implement Microsoft Business Central, doing it on a fixed fee basis, everything on a fixed price. But when we got to the point about 100% remote, they couldn't get past that. They kept saying, well, so we want you to come on site and do the training. How much is it going to cost to do that? And we want you on site for go live. How much is it going to cost to do that? And we kept talking about, and even talking about other customers and having them talk to other customers that, we can be very successful doing this. The bottom line was we couldn't get them over the hump. And finally, we just said, look, okay, obviously we are not the partner for you in this situation. So to answer your question specifically, I'll do a little bit of work trying to at least allay their concerns and talk about how we can be successful, and let them even talk to some of our customers. But I'm not going to sit, if they can't get past it, then it's literally trying to put a round peg into a square hole, and we're just not going to go there. So.
It's not a fit. It's not an ideal match, which makes sense. Now you mentioned that doing things faster. What are the benefits from your perspective of doing implementations remotely?
Well, first of all, there's no travel. And, when I think about, just the hassles of travel, I mean, you and I have both spent a lot of days on the road in our professional lives. And, you can spend, you talked earlier about ice storms, right? Just the delays in airports and all that, just how disruptive it is to our personal lives. And I think also when I'm going to tie this into culture a little bit, because, I want to have people that on my team that like having a family life, like to be balanced, right? And typically that profile of, people, travel is really disruptive for them. So from the consultant side, from the team side, I believe our team is way more productive and way more focused. And actually, this is going to sound bad, but I think we can ultimately get more work out of people, productive time than when we're not traveling than when we are traveling. So from a customer perspective, I believe we can deliver everything remotely through the tools that we have, as well as we can deliver them being on site. Plus, what I'm finding, and especially what we do when we implement ERP technology, ERP software, customer wants to pay us, they come on site. They want to fit as much as they possibly can into that week when we're on site, right? Because to pay all the travel expenses and they're for only like 3 days or 3 partial days or 4 partial days, they don't feel like they're getting the bang for their buck. But when we're implementing this kind of technology, it just takes time. So there's only so much that the team, the customer can actually absorb and digest in a fixed period of time. Yeah. When we come on site and we're trying to fit all this stuff into a week, we actually throw more at them than they can consume. So that's one way. I think, just schedule conflicts. Every time, we've all experienced this. We go on site, I've got an emergency. So this customer that we intended to spend, 3 or 4 hours with, the CFO's been pulled out and he's got to go to a meeting, or she's got to go to a meeting, and an emergency. And well, if we're remote, it's less disruptive, because you can say, go do your meeting. I'm going to go, I've got other work that I can do in my home office or whatever. I can be productive. So you tell me when you're, back. And so I think there's a productivity factor there that's way better. I talked a little bit earlier about communication. I think we communicate better. I think we plan better. Also, doing things over Teams or recorded, whether Teams or Zoom, whatever, we can record. So a lot of our sessions we actually record. So our customers that can actually come back and they can replay. That's like, rather than even having to take great notes. So there's a lot of benefits. I could probably spend the rest of our, what do we got, 3 hours together?
Yes, 3.5.
Yeah, I could spend the rest of the 3 hours today talking about all the benefits, but I'm really finding it's very beneficial to be on site. I'm sorry, not be on site, be remote.
Well, and you mentioned that maybe it would sound a little bad that you'd get more productivity out of people, but I know for me, having been a road warrior, that was the hardest part of travel, was how unproductive I felt. Especially because for some reason, I think my old boss didn't love me, and I say that tongue in cheek, because he always sent me to upstate New York in the middle of the winter. I think it was 4 years in a row he did that. Different clients, but apparently I was the best person for the job.
Yeah.
Not sure about that, but then you're spending 2 full days in the air, and I don't care what anybody tells you, there's only a certain kinds of work you can get done when you're sitting in coach, with your elbows, tucked in and all that. And now that's tough. I prefer to feel productive.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think when you look at, especially what we do when we implement ERP, right? There's different skill sets that are really involved. Whether it be on the accounting side, or maybe on the warehouse side or purchasing side, and there is not everybody that implements is great at every single thing in an ERP, right? So I can make sure that we get the right person for the right piece of the job. And so going on site, you tend to dilute that, I think, because you can't really, it costs a lot, especially in what we do, when our customers are so cost conscious.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a better bang for the buck. We can get the perfect expertise, with that customer in that specific, point in time. And the other thing is, one more thing, and we can get off this subject, but it's just, how many times have we said, we really, the training really needs to happen this week for the customer schedule. Well, but then unfortunately, the consultant that has been involved in this project has a family commitment that week, right?
Right. Yeah.
So then either we have to reschedule that, or we've got to get a different consultant in. So there's just so many things, so many benefits to delivering remotely, that I think, it's a different paradigm, but it's, we're changing that paradigm. So
I love that. And for professional services in general, whether it's lawyers or whatnot, you really can assign based on best fit, as opposed to making attempts for, geography to manage travel costs or whatever that is. You can really say, okay, this is the best person based on industry experience, or, all the different factors. And for anyone who's doesn't work in this field, you weren't joking about you have a meeting and then the CXO isn't available. I actually had one cancel on me about 10 minutes before I left my house to get on a flight across country, and was just talking to a friend, and they emailed her 5 minutes after her flight took off from here to Atlanta. So it was the business trip that in the air, and then turn around and come right back. And so just so many practicalities that make, if you can deliver remotely, which a lot of companies don't have that expertise yet, that you guys really have cornered. And you mentioned cost conscious companies. Can you talk a little bit, and this is just for a quick answer, you're focused on smaller businesses and rapid implementations. What's the scope and scale? Like, what's rapid?
Yeah, so we're laser focused on the S of the SMB. So this really the small end of the SMB, and literally, we implement Microsoft Business Central. So 100% cloud-based, and we literally have a kickstart implementation where we will get a customer up and live on Business Central in 1 week. So it's crazy, there's some some criteria that a customer has to meet in that. But I will tell you that our typical implementation, it's outcome based, it's fixed price, is typically 4 to 6 weeks, and that's actually with financials, sales order processing, purchase order processing, inventory, and maybe throw in fixed assets. So, back when we were at TriBridge, we wanted to do that, and we could never figure that out. We could never get it there. But we've been doing that. Cooper Perry's been doing that for the last 2 years, exclusively on Business Central. So we've got it down. It's really, really cool. So
that is incredible. I mean, that's like QuickBooks, except for it's a much more scalable platform than QuickBooks.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's cool.
That's very cool. So for those of you who don't know TriBridge was acquired, so it's no longer. So Bobby is not saying his new company is better than his old company. He would never say that because we work there together. But yeah, that's in like a week or two, getting something up. I mean, that makes it much more accessible than SAP in getting it live in 3 to 5 years.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and if I told you the price that we're doing this stuff for, when I first saw this, when I first started talking to Brett and Vicky, who are the principal owners of Cooper Perry, when they told me what they did these implementations for, it's like, you've got to be kidding me. And the other thing too, I mean, to be fair, is that we implement what we call typically a minimum viable product.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, love it.
And I think that's another thing, and I don't know how much, if we even have time to get into this, so you can just cut me off if I need to, but I look, and I think sometimes that we try to give businesses almost a whiteboard, and we give them this thing, basically, we'll implement whatever the heck you want, and we get into this situation, we find out that people are essentially trying to replicate every detail of this system that they hated, that they built all these processes around. And we're saying, you know what, we're going to implement the software really out of the box.
Yeah.
And we're going to work with you over time, just use it out of the box. And then you'll figure out what things you can really adapt your business to. And then there may be some things that for whatever reason, we're going to have to configure a little bit differently, or maybe even, I hate to use the word customize, but those things do, at some point you might need that. But so we take a totally different approach to that, and we really force our customers to, and it's actually, they agree to this, to truly implement primarily plain vanilla software, which is really awesome.
It is, at least for someone like me, because if you ask me what I think I want, I'm going to give you all this laundry list. And then I'm going to get it, and I'm going to like, this is kludgy, it's a mess. Whereas if I have a chance to use the system that was built on leading practices, there's going to be so many things revealed to me that like, I never would have thought of that. I never would have thought of that. And then, like you said, over time, there may be some, tweaks and tailoring here and there. But yes, MVP, music to my ears, not trying to eat the elephant in one bite. Not that I've eaten elephants, but yeah. So I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit. So you mentioned Cooper Perry IT is a UK-based business.
Yes.
What's it been like growing a US business with a UK headquarters? Same old as your previous life?
Oh
totally
my.
Different?
That's kind of a loaded question, but
I struck a nerve. Uh-oh.
Well, yeah, let me just say that I remember when I first started talking to Brett and Vicky about this, I was thinking, wow, this is going to be easy, right? We have an established company in the UK that's got a great methodology. It's got a great culture. They've got a great relationship with Microsoft. We can just take that literally and forklift it over to the US, right? Well, some of that actually is forkliftable. But if that's a real word, but
it is now.
I tell you what, it's really been like starting from scratch, because I wasn't even thinking about the fact that even though we speak the same language, there's a lot of things that mean different things in the US English versus the UK English. So that means all of our contracts had to be essentially rewritten.
Oh, yeah.
The law, I mean, not to mention language, but the legal, the laws are different. So, employment agreements, customer agreements, MSAs, SOWs, even to the point like our website. Literally, the first thing that I did when I came aboard was I took the UK website literally and just went through it and redlined and made it US English versus versus UK. Like I said, the employment laws, getting benefits set up.
Ooh.
The HR laws are different. So that was way more complicated than I thought it would be. I thought we could literally just go to, one of these, outsourced benefit providers and get it spun up. No, like even banks, trying to get our bank set up. I thought that would be easy. Well, we bank with an international bank, but still just getting a U.S. bank account set up, was quite eventful. It took us about a month and a half, which if somebody would have told me that, I would have said, you're crazy.
Right.
So there's just been a lot. I spent way more time doing admin work than I thought I was going to have to do. I totally underestimated that.
So for anybody who needs somebody to look at your website copy and localize it for different markets, apparently Bobby's now got some skills there. Feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, my pleasure. Oh, yeah, seriously. So that sounds a little bit daunting. Yeah. I don't tend to prefer surprises. Why didn't you just quit? I mean, it wasn't what you signed up for, or at least what you perceived you signed up for.
Yeah, that's a good question. I tell you what, it's couple reasons actually. You and I've worked together for a long time, so part of my DNA is that I'm the eternal optimist, right? So it's like, okay, I know it's going to get better. I know we're going to get through this. It's going to be awesome. But I mentioned, we just talked about all the negative stuff, but I was literally focused on the positive. So, the culture and the brand of this company was amazing. I mean, if you go to our website, pink, purple, lime green, yellow, and this is a company that sells technology to businesses, right? So I'm used to this kind of
blue,
more formal blue, this Microsoft stuff. And here I see dancing pandas, in pink.
Love it.
It's crazy. So just the culture, the branding is really cool, different, whimsical, animated, colorful, creative. I mentioned that Microsoft loves Cooper Perry, and in fact, Cooper Perry was named the 2019 Global Business Central Partner of the Year for Microsoft. So that is absolutely forkliftable, right, to the US.
Yeah.
Microsoft's been incredibly supportive. We have a great relationship with Ingram Micro.
Okay.
So that was transferable from the UK relationship to now it's a global relationship. The IP that we have as far as how we implement these rapid implementations absolutely is transferable. The company is financially strong. The company itself has been in business I think the IT division of Cooper Perry has been around for over 15 years. Run similar to how the business that we came from is very fiscally responsible. So that's attractive to me. The leadership of this company is amazing. They're people just like me and people that I love being around. Not that I'm awesome, but I mean, we kind of like being with people that are a little bit like us, right? So we share this value system. Just the leadership team. Once I started talking to the other leaders in the business, like, whoa, that guy's brilliant. I mean, you saw it from Paul last week. Paul's brilliant, and Brett and Vicky are amazing. they're just amazing human beings. So that was really attractive. Very transparent. So literally, I think the company is just a little under 100 people. Brett, our CEO, literally shares detailed financial information with the whole team, which is really cool, very transparent. And the last thing I'll say, and it's probably foundational to everything, it's about trust. I mean, there is so much trust in this business. The leadership trusts every single team member in this business. And so if you look at the website, it just screams people, 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 and that they really value people. And at first, the first time when I saw it, it's like, I didn't really believe it. I thought, how can this really be this good?
Yeah.
And then I made my first trip over to the UK, and literally a week, my first weekend, it's like, whoa, it is just like it says on the website. So anyway, I'm sorry for the long-winded answer, but it's amazing. So that's why I stuck with it. That's why it's amazing. So.
No, I love that. And I just want to take a minute to kind of highlight a few things for the people who are listening in. We have a couple speakers coming up who are in Asia, and they're going to kind of talk about how they tackled the big challenges of COVID and recession and the great sessions. And one of the reasons I wanted Bobby on is they were not COVID driven issues in terms of trying to launch a business in the US when they have a UK headquarters. But every leader of a small mid-sized business has faced these kind of oh crud moments of this is daunting. And it's so important to look at all of the incredible aspects of your business, of a business, because those are the things you can't rebuild overnight. Trust, culture, leadership, relationships with companies like Microsoft or whomever. And so when we're in this time of like, oh no, everything I build is falling apart, or cash flow is iffy, or we have customers who aren't moving forward, whatever it is to kind of really count the blessings, the positives of our business, to say, okay, this is not changing. The trust is not changing. The incredible team is not changing. And then to look from there to say, okay, how do we navigate this new crazy world, which happens to be COVID, quarantine, work from home driven, but there's been aspects of that throughout our whole careers. Yes, this is introducing more all at once, but it's not a new thing. Right.
Yeah, it's funny. When you were talking there, I was thinking, you can't operate out of fear. And, although this is really crazy times, and none of us have, or very few of us have probably experienced something like this, in our careers. But, when I think about being a leader and my responsibility as a leader, I can either be fearful and contract and be very safe and start, do everything to try. It's kind of like a game, right? If you're trying not to lose the game, you're going to get the crap beat out of you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think, how can you leverage this time where you say, look, I'm going to be on the offensive. I'm going to try to figure out, okay, how can we innovate through this? And yes, we've got to be practical, right? We've got to take steps to make sure we're taking care of our business and doing the things that will keep us in business. But we cannot be operating from a position of fear. We have to be operating from, how can I leverage, not take advantage, but how can I leverage this and basically reinvent, get creative, figure out, how can we change? Reinvent, I guess, is probably the best thing I could think about or think of, or the best word. How can we reinvent? How can we, get creative and really innovate, I guess, through this time?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you brought up fear, because when I look at my life, most of the amazing things that I have were big. They were very fearful. I mean, I up and sold almost everything I owned a little over 10 years ago to move to California by the beach. Didn't know a soul, and people thought I was crazy, which I've got a little strain of crazy. But amazing things have happened. And I think so many of us, when we look back, you're right, it's when we weren't making decisions from that place of fear and just moving forward. And you mentioned, not taking advantage of a situation, which I think a lot of us are super sensitive to, but if you can provide value to people that need it right now, then I think on my whiteboard behind me, I have the phrase opportunity abounds. Opportunities to add value abounds. People need what other people do. And so being able to articulate that and not holding back in fear is giving other people a chance to get that value that you provide and other companies provide.
Yeah, you used a word, and I, or at least, it's about need, right? And I think it kind of goes to this whole thing about serving and servant leadership and all that, right? But it's about focusing on other people's needs. And in fact, focusing on other people's needs, before your needs, in front of your needs. And that's what servant leadership is all about. And so that's what I look at, people need people like us to serve them and help guide them through this time and help them, help them with their technology, as they innovate, as they reinvent their business. But the thing is that what they need is not necessarily, they don't need it in the same way that they did, 2 or 3 months ago, right? They need it in a different way. They need it based on the way the world is now. So that's a challenge for us as leaders, technology companies. How can we lead? How can we serve focused on them? Just knowing that, if I focus on other people's needs, it's funny how ultimately how we will be rewarded. It's not that we go into it with that reward in mind, but that reward is a byproduct of our focus on other people, focus on serving others. So that's really what this is about.
Yeah. So you mentioned servant leadership, which I am also a big fan of. Are there other leadership concepts, authors, books that have really impacted your career and your development as a leader?
Yeah, I would say, for a long time, I've heard of servant leadership, and I feel like that to a certain extent that I practice servant leadership, but maybe I didn't know I didn't really label it, right? And I remember back at the 2000, when we had the tech crash and all that and stuff, I found myself out of a job, and I'd started a company that literally it failed during that tech crash. So I had some time to do some research, and somebody handed me a book, a buddy of mine actually, and it was The Servant by James Hunter. And I would say that book has probably had the greatest impact on me professionally, and maybe even personally, than any other book, maybe except for the Bible. But the book is by James Hunter, and it lays out servant leadership so concisely in a fable format like no other book. It's a book like you could read on an airplane. It's that short of a book.
Yeah.
To me, it brought servant leadership to life. And so I love that book. I talked a little bit about trust, earlier about, in Cooper Perry. And I mean, trust is foundational to everything, right? If you have trust, and then you can do so much. And Pat Lencioni, I love Pat Lencioni. Yes. And a lot of his books talk about the underlying, about trust being underlying. And I think about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Mm-hmm. That book had so much impact on teams that I've led. I use that book to facilitate and to try to get past that and really build high performing teams. And that was the book that was really the foundational for that. John Gordon, Energy Bus.
Oh yeah.
great book just about, positive, how energy feeds on energy. And, you don't want an energy vampire on your team, right? So, and everybody knows one.
Yeah.
Mark Miller, he has a book called Win the Heart. And Mark Miller's awesome anyway, but his book about winning the heart is, I think, a great book that any leader should take a look at. And then the last person I would mention that I love, and it impacts me on a daily basis or a weekly basis, is Simon Sinek. I love Simon Sinek. And
I do too.
I love his optimism, and I love his thing, what he calls it, the infinite mindset, right? Mm-hmm. And, I think too many leaders think about things in a finite way.
Yeah.
And, I think if you think about things in more of an infinite way, you're not limited by having to manage to a quarterly expectations or even annual expectations.
Yeah.
Thinking beyond that, thinking of more infinite. Again, I could probably talk another hour about those things as well, but those are probably 4 or 5 authors and books that have really impacted my leadership.
That's the winning the heart one. That the same principles apply in customer experience, which is my area of passion, because it really, when you win the hearts and minds of your team and or your customers, that's priceless.
Yeah. Well, I think about it, yes, from a customer perspective, and I get that's your focus too. And obviously it's ours, we're a customer service business, but I'm thinking about, from a team standpoint and how to motivate team members. If I can actually get their heart, if I can win their heart, what the things that they will do, they will walk through fire. If their heart's on fire for something, they will absolutely go to the mat. They'll go to the mat for their customers. They'll go to the mat for their team. They'll go to the mat for their leadership. There's so much there.
They'll fly to upstate New York in ice storms for 4 or 5 years in a row. No, it's so true. And I'm glad you brought up trust, and you had mentioned in your organization that the leadership trusts every single person. And to me, that's huge, especially when you were also talking about fear, is if someone trusts me, I am going to do everything in my power to rise to that occasion, to rise to their expectations, to maintain that trust. Whereas if the trust is kind of maybe uncertain, they always say, you rise to expectations or you sink to them. I'm going to kind of live in paranoia, or I'm going to make decisions in fear, knowing that they don't totally trust me. And that's really going to, hold me back in doing what my best for my peers, my clients,
absolutely,
etc.
Absolutely. Trust is foundational. And I think, when I think back about, from a leadership standpoint, when I think about trust, it's really about, we have to model. But I think, you hear the word vulnerability, right? I think if we can be vulnerable, if we can, as a leader, if we can admit, when we've screwed something up, which we all do, right? We all mess up, and, be humble through that, where we, actually, where we realize our limitations, we acknowledge our limitations, and we just really, we just have an attitude of vulnerability, and we're vulnerable with our team. It's amazing how much trust can be gained with that. And without trust, you can't be vulnerable. So, because you want your team to be vulnerable with you as well. So it's those concepts all intertwined, and they're all really powerful.
So because you talked about servant leadership and the book, The Servant, how it feels like in the current context of COVID that the need for that would be exponential. Can you kind of talk about what that servant leadership means to you practically in this point in time?
Yeah, it's if I break it down and say, it's really focused on other people's needs, not their wants, but it's their needs.
Mm-hmm.
I think about, well, how do I really understand what their need is? It's about being able to listen, right? I have to be able to listen. I have to, if they're going to allow me to serve them, they've got to know that I care about them, and this is going to sound really, really odd, but one of the things in the servant, it seems counter to business, because how often do you hear the word love in business, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't, and so when immediately somebody talks about love, they think about this emotional thing, right? But love is really an action, right? It's putting in action, it's doing, it's very action oriented. So I think that we have to love people. And I think about, during this time, it really is, I think it's a time when it's bringing people together, and we have to, there's so much noise about all the, everyone disagreeing and, all this conflict. And, but I think I do think that people are coming together. And so from a business perspective, it's when I think about how can I serve somebody else, how can I love them, right? Which is, again, it seems weird in a business context. So I think if we just think about how can I, how this person in need, how can I hear them, listen to them, and then figure out how, what do I have that can truly make a difference in their situation in a positive way. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I probably wasn't very concise in that, but that's kind of what it means to me.
No, that makes sense. And it actually made me think there are probably people who servant leadership comes more naturally during times like this, just because we're all more hyper aware that that's important in relationships. And so it just comes more naturally than when times seem amazing. It's easier to forget that people are multidimensional and, may have different layers of need beyond just, kind of the surface of work. But you said love, and yes, that it feels a little odd, but I know the people that I've worked with that I had the most trust in and vice versa, I'd take a bullet for those people. And is that a version of love? Absolutely.
Well, I think too is that there's a lot of people in this, today that haven't been really, significantly impacted by this, right? Then there's other people that have been totally devastated with it, health-wise, or losing a family member or whatever, or losing a business, or, so it's, it's about us. When I think about helping somebody, it's not thinking about me. It's thinking about them. So the focus the focus moves from an inward focus to truly an external focus. So that's what I think, for us that have been fortunate through this, it's like, how can we be externally focused?
Yeah.
And, the cool thing is that there's, the byproduct of that, there's going to be a lot of cool businesses birthed out of people being externally focused, again, because, it's going to come, and it will come back. So.
Yeah, it will. Even just putting this summit together, it's been interesting because I've mentioned in other conversations, it was not that hard to find speakers. But in the process, we've had certain speakers that, couldn't deliver on time or any number of things for real reasons. And it's okay. We've told people, we're like, the times are weird. And so they apologize profusely. And it's like, no, not necessary. Right now, your family, your health, those things, they should always be your priority. But right now, if we're not sensitive to that, I don't want to say we're despicable human beings, but I'd feel pretty despicable about myself if I'm thinking, oh no, now I have an empty slot in my summit because so-and-so, whatever. It's people front and center, the human being and our relationships with them. And for a lot, I would say a lot of people, that just comes naturally of, yeah, the work thing we can figure out. How do we help take care of you or make sure that you're, as a human, taken care of?
Yeah, I agree totally.
So I know we've covered the gamut. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you're like, oh, if she would ask me that, I would get, pull out a very important soapbox or anything like that?
No, I can't really think of anything else. We've covered a lot. So it's been a pleasure. It's been great reconnecting with a bunch of really cool people that I used to work with. So
yeah, it has been.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
So for people that have heard the words rapid implementation, getting an implementation done in a week or more, typically 4 to 6 weeks, those types of things. If they're curious, want to know more, interested in more about Cooper Perry, what are the best ways to reach out?
I mean, LinkedIn is really easy, right? So certainly I'm on LinkedIn. Our website is, cooperperryit.com. There's information there, but I'd say that, LinkedIn is probably the best and the easiest way to connect. But yeah, I'd welcome anyone reaching out. If you just want to say hello, that's great too. So
wonderful. And I will highlight what I did in Paul's last week. It's Cooper Perry. Perry is Parry. So if you don't find him when you type it in some other way, that's why. And there'll be a slide after this video that shows some additional information about Cooper Perry. So Bobby, thank you so much. I know that your schedule's jam-packed, so I appreciate you taking some time to talk with us and about your experience, taking over this leadership role, and it's been awesome.
Well, thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate the opportunity just to hang with you for an hour and share, and it's been great. So
I love it. My pleasure. Thanks.
All right.